Now, the first thing we're going to do when the deployment is completed is make sure that we can log in to this virtual machine using remote desktop. All right. Now, Nito, you asked me the question, do you have to use remote desktop to access the server? You can see here that when I log into my existing virtual machine using remote desktop, it's convenient because you can imagine if, say, Nicholas wanted to use, let me show you what I mean when in my email reply, I mentioned that if somebody on the team wants to use some of the clients that are in Loggernet, some of the visual clients in Loggernet, it doesn't make any sense to log in using a command line. You really need to log in using a tool like Remote Desktop because these are visual clients. All right. So right now I'm going to show you the Connect client, which is instead of going through the process of building one of those RTMC Pro dashboards, if I just want to quickly look at some data, I'm going to go to my GU Tech data logger, click Connect, and you can see here the little plug closes and it's now connected. If I want to say just look at some of the data that exists on the data logger, I can use this Numerical Display tool here. And let's say I want to look at the wind speed right now. Or something, let's see. Let's say wind speed and the temperature in each of the zones. So I'm just control clicking the 4 zones and then also outdoors. Paste. All right, so I'm looking at the live readings in the being collected by the data logger from the sensors. Okay, so this is one quick way to look at some numbers, and then you could also use one of these graphing tools here to see things as they change. Let's see, something that would change. Now, nothing probably changes very frequently, but let's just look at outdoor temperature. All right, so this is updating every second. The data is actually coming in every 20 seconds from the data logger. So what's happening here is that Loggernet is collecting data from the data logger every 20 seconds. The data logger, so there's a temperature sensor that is connected to the data logger in the house. And the data logger is programmed so I've programmed the data logger to read that temperature sensor every 20 seconds. So that's the rate at which it changes the number, the reading. All right. So, what's happening is Loggernet, I've set Loggernet up to connect to the data logger and grab all the data that it doesn't have yet from the data logger. And you can see that process if we open up the status monitor tool and we see the GU Tech data logger. Every 20 seconds, so right here it says the next data collection will be 6:10 and 10 seconds. And by the way, this Azure server by default is on UTC time. So right now it is it's 10:10 a.m. in Muscat on May 4th. But on the server here it's 6:10, 4 hours earlier. So we'll see every 20 seconds I have a scheduled collection running. So Loggernet is going to connect to the data logger and grab the new data that it doesn't have yet. So that's it's the most recent 20-second data point. And this happens pretty quickly. You don't really see much happening, but it's normal. You can see there's values collected during the last collection. So they're coming in right now. So you can see red. So we have red for Dofar and SQU. So those I'm not able to connect to those data loggers right now, but GUtech is working fine. All right, I'm going to check back on. So I'm going to check back on the our Azure deployment, but this is very important that I think the team may, from time to time, want to use these Loggernet tools to look at the data in a more flexible manner than what's convenient than what is convenient with RTMC Pro. RTMC Pro is really meant to set up dashboards that you're going to deploy to the CSI web server, and they're not going to change a lot. So, I mean, the numbers inside them are going to change as the data comes in, but you're not going to redesign them very often. I always use these Loggernet tools if let's say I have a problem with the sensor and I want to troubleshoot. I can set up different views to see the data in different ways very quickly without having to deploy them to a web server each time. All right. And the tools there's only a few tools that I use a lot. One is the Connect and all those graphing tools. That's this one here. All those the graphing tool and the numerical display are in here. I'm going to disconnect right now. There's the setup tool, which we'll look at later. The setup client, really, technically that's what it is. It's a client to the Loggernet server. This is where we configure Loggernet to connect to the different data loggers. And this is a very important step, this setup screen configuration. So we'll spend some time on that later. I usually just leave the status monitor view open. And there's others here that I use less often, and you can see that there's a option here to access RTMC Pro from directly within Loggernet. Okay. But again, this is if I click on this, I can do it. It's going to open up RTMC Pro, but it's a version of RTMC Pro running on the Windows server. And so there's a little bit of latency with the screen because I'm using remote desktop. So I'd prefer to use RTMC Pro on my desktop computer, and when I'm ready to deploy the dashboard, I deploy it to our CSI web server. I do it that way. And if we take a look at CSI web server, for some reason I have to click this CSI web administrator twice in order for it to open. I don't know what that's all about, but on Azure I have to click it twice. So just for your information there. And you can see the web server version 1.5 is running. And here you can see the addresses of the current active connections. So that's that. Actually, I usually leave that up. So whenever I log into my Azure virtual machine, I like to take a look at the status monitor and the CSI web server administrator just to make sure everything looks like it's running the way I expect it. Okay, I'm going to close out of this for now and just leave it running.